a big zombie movie fan. I'm a big zombie book reader. Like I like that kind of thing, and this
Right.
just screams the beginning of the movie for me. First off, I want to say thank you for doing this again because we did this. I checked back on my notes in the recording. We did this on February 17th, just a couple of weeks before this crap went down. How young and innocent we were then.
Yeah, it's wild how things can change. Totally.
So thanks for doing this again. Because of my naivete in this whole process, I brought my camera but didn't know what the hell I was doing. Well, how about we jump in? Why don't you tell us who you are, what you do?
So I'm Krystal. I run the DIY music site Scenes from the Underground. I occasionally book showcases under the same name. Everyday life, I'm an event freelancer and I work in small business retail.
Can you tell us about Scenes from the Underground? The website and the showcases?
Yeah, so I started Scenes from the Underground back in the summer of 2017. It kind of started with just a conversation with me and a few girlfriends at dinner one night. And one of my friends was just like, "You know a lot about music in terms of like bands and up and coming artists." And I was like, "Well, yeah, like I used to write about music in college for a little bit from time to time." But I kind of let that site kind of die out because I didn't really have like a focus for it. So I was like, maybe I'll go back to it. And then maybe like a week or two later, I started seeing some underground to kind of just focus on bands coming up from New York. And then obviously that's evolved again because now it's like I've started interviewing larger bands. So occasionally I'll have like, I might have like a cool op-ed from someone DIY in the scene, or I might like check out this like, someone might send me something on Instagram. I'm like, okay, cool. And then, I'm also a pop punk kid, like a pop punk and punk kid. So it's like, all right, like I might interview like this bigger band that's coming up or a bigger band that's already established and kind of just go from there. Um, and then the showcases started in June 2018. And that story is it it started with Warp Tour.
It started
And
with Warp Tour?
it started with Warp Tour, yeah. I started booking shows because of Warp Tour.
Jeez,
So
way to kick off a start there.
to elaborate, my very first showcase was at Hank's Saloon in Brooklyn, which no longer exists,
I remember
unfortunately,
that
which
place.
makes me so upset and so sad because that staff was absolutely amazing. Um, and it was a pre-Warp Tour showcase featuring Nilosterous, Treads, and Fat Heaven. And they were bands that were all playing like different like local dates of the final cross country Vans Warp Tour. End of 2017, I am having a conversation with a friend and I'm like, oh shit, Warp Tour is ending. Like, this summer is going to be the final like Vans Warp Tour. Well, okay, Warp Tour for me has always meant like, seeing like bigger bands that you grew up listening to and that you were a fan of, that you watched on Fuse or MTV and whatnot. But also, checking out bands that still hadn't like made it just yet, that were still kind of coming up, that were like in the parking lot giving you stickers to come see their set. So I got a hold of Kevin Lyman's email on Twitter and I shot him an email like maybe like the week or Monday after Thanksgiving. And I was like, my name is Krystal. I run a smaller music site here in New York. At the time, I had a really cool like video series called Scenes from Backstage. We kind of interviewed like smaller bands from New York as well. I think that you should consider for the final cross country Vans Warp Tour on local dates, so New York, New Jersey, Long Island, and sent him 11 bands. Within that week, I had 2 bands booked. And then by the time the first week in January came around, like after New Year's, I had 6 more bands. So I had 8 bands on the final cross country Vans Warp Tour over 6 dates. So obviously that happened. So I was like, well, let's throw a showcase and celebrate. And that was kind of the first 16s from the underground showcase and kind of how that kind of came to be.
And that was at Hank's, right?
That's a Hank's
Like the
Saloon,
kickoff
yeah.
show? That's amazing.
The bands had no idea. Like no one knew. So they were all like, wait, what?
That's a hell of a surprise.
Yeah. Because here's my thing. Like at that point, Warped is ending, and I think there really should have been more local bands on the smaller stage. Every bigger band was a smaller band at some point, and you never know who's going to be your new favorite bands. You know what I mean? So,
Absolutely.
I mean, you just never know. And I feel like with the generation coming up now, I don't know if they fully understand it or if there's just so much music out there
Yeah.
that it's hard to keep up with.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of why I wanted to start this. When I started jumping back into this, I never stopped, but I certainly, it wasn't, my life, and I want it to be. And when I kind of started jumping back into this full force, I realized the game has changed completely. But we're talking about like a 6-year difference in the world has made, a generational difference in the way music is consumed.
Oh
Um,
yeah. And I think one of the things is the fact that it's great because now, anyone can make music, but because you can make music
doesn't mean
doesn't
you should.
good. Yeah. And I say that because I grew up on gospel, hip hop, and then when I got into my preteens and teens, pop punk, punk rock. So it's cool to like go to Warp Tour, like go to Taste of Chaos. These bands that have been out for like 10 years writing these songs and, putting on these shows. But now it's like you have like these like SoundCloud rappers and, like these like rap, like emo rap and whatnot. And again, that's
Whoa,
cool to kind of like,
whoa,
mix
whoa,
genres and
whoa,
like,
hold on.
what's
Did
up?
you just say emo rap?
Emo rap is a thing.
I
Yes.
think I have to consider retiring.
Don't, please don't. We need you. I say this honestly. I don't really listen to modern hip hop anymore. Just because I think, first of all, I think lyrically a lot of it I don't relate to under any circumstances. But even some of like the newer like pop punk bands, like I can't really tell you like some of like the newer bands coming out. I don't care for this notion of like, more cis white dudes in a band who are pretty and like think that just because they can play, they should be like on tour or like, signed to like, a label. It's now I will say, I will give props to a lot of the hardcore bands coming up who, are writing about like political things and like, take a stand against something and actually really like mean what they say. Some of these bands like War on Women, insane. Sharptooth coming out of Baltimore, fucking sick. Like one of my favorite hardcore bands. And then even like going smaller in our DIY scene, like, Universe Ignore Her, fucking amazing. Like, I
Really?
mean, so there's definitely some great bands to kind of keep your eye on, for sure. Just bigger and smaller. So that's always good.
Well, I think that becomes a part of the problem in today's music scene. Also, is music is so accessible and there is so
It is.
much of it. Where do you find the good stuff?
Yeah,
My feeling exactly.
it's like for me, it's like unless you're going to shows frequently enough, personally, I hear bands from word of mouth. Um, I follow certain bands, and then whoever they're friends with, I was like, okay, I'll check them out too. So kind of like the old fashioned way, I guess, of finding music was like word of mouth, social media, just seeing who's just kind of out there. But again, it's kind of like a delicate dance. Okay, like, do I have the time to sit here and listen to 10 bands today? Like, what's going to happen? Do I
Right.
want to stick to what I know? Um,
100%. And then the things like social media, and we
yeah.
can lump Spotify into that because that is a form of social media. Listen to this band for artists who like this, and you're like, well, I like that.
Okay.
I must like these guys. It's like the new radio.
It is. Yeah. Great. Because I haven't listened to mainstream radio in,
Forever.
yeah, maybe like 8 years.
Can you name one rock radio station in New York?
Well, there was K Rock.
There was.
Um,
Then what was it? Was it RXP? Is that what they turned
yeah,
into?
I remember RXP.
Dude, I loved that's, they played such great music and then they got bought out too. And now what do you have? You have classic rock.
Oh, yeah, I forgot
And
about them
that's it,
too.
man. I mean, for a city that considers itself the center of the universe, it's weird that we don't kind of have anything to represent the center of the universe.
Oh,
But now you say this like a true New Yorker, which means you must be from here.
yeah, I was born and raised in Brooklyn. So
So would you consider yourself someone who wants to sort of shape the industry, or are you kind of just riding the wave of the industry and kind of just trying to introduce an audience to new things?
I think definitely shaping it.
Okay.
I think the one thing about music and the industry as a whole, it's cool how it kind of like shifts and changes. That doesn't necessarily mean all those shifts and changes are actually good. And I will say, I think there's a big disconnect between the large music scene and the smaller music scene. And that was something I kind of saw during Warp Tour, being out on crew with two bands, and like even just in general now, like, for example, you have like bigger bands that come and play New York. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. That's awesome. So why aren't, you know, like, I guess like talent buyers and maybe these bands, people trying to find like local opening bands trying to open for them. So how does this all kind of fit together though? Like, how do you like, like should bigger bands be seeking out smaller bands to open for them? Should smaller bands be trying to, like do more of the work and try and get on these tours? Like, you know what I mean? It's just like, how does this all kind of fit together in the end? A lot of people don't know this behind the scene. And like, I'll be like, oh, this band's coming through New York. Oh, cool. Find their email on their Facebook page, find their manager's email, be like, hey, I produce my own showcases. By the way, I think this band would be great to open for you. And
Oh, that's
honestly, the
awesome.
worst they can say is either yes or no.
It's a rare
Yeah.
person who has the balls to do that too. But that's the kind of stuff you run into with promoters who just throw acts together. Yes, you run the risk of them not showing up for the opener because who gives a crap about this local band?
And also, too, it's just being transparent about it, too. Because again, I don't mind seeing like other bands that are coming out of like, let's say the hardcore scene outside of New York. Just make sure you put a note of it for the people actually coming to that show.
You'll find that the audience is way more receptive if they know that there's an
They are.
additional band that they've got to sit through.
I mean, honestly, like I've been to shows where it's 6 bands. I've been to shows where it's 5 bands. Obviously, normally New York City, though, generally tends to be like 3 to 4 bands on a bill. I think anything more than that, it gets really sticky.
Yeah.
Especially if you're not giving set times, if you're not
Forget it.
being honest about how many bands are actually on the bill that night.
I've played a bunch of venues where they're like, all right, you're on at 8:00, and you think, all right, well, then we're the first band. We better get there on time. You show up at 7:30 to load in, and the first band is already playing. You're like, well, I thought
Well,
we
how
were
was
the
that
first
fair?
band. And then,
Like, maybe I want to see the first band. Like, what are you doing?
yeah,
like,
but that's what, as a musician, like, I also feel like that etiquette has gone out the window. Like you show up for the show, you're there to show support for your fellow musician.
Exactly.
Like,
I'm a big believer in that too. You never know who's going to could wind up being your tour mate at some point, your label mate. Don't be a dick. It's just general good advice.
Maybe this whole pandemic thing will bring out the artistry again.
Artistry, I feel like, has always been there because I know there are some bands that I see constantly that I keep going back to see because they're just that good and they're also amazing people. I think it's just the communication. And not necessarily with the bands. I think it's between like venue, promoter, and whatnot. Like, so some of the communication's been really, really shaky. So
I'm curious, how did you get to this point? Like what I didn't know this about you until we started this conversation, that you went to school for journalism, but how did you go from there to trying to shape the new music industry?
There was a time I wanted to be a music journalist. So I went to school for print journalism and sociology.
Interesting.
Came back to New York, went to grad school for TV, film, and production.
Oh, wow.
You might have your path set out before you, like, because I know I'm a planner. So
clearly,
I want to work for a label and do A&R, and that totally did not happen under any circumstances. So I kind of had to pave my own path a little bit. And it's crazy because like one of my friends, we were talking about music like over the summer and whatnot. And she was just like, well, yeah, you work in music. And I was like, oh shit. Like,
oh shit, I do work in music.
Yeah, I do. And I think something else I would tell people is that, if you want to work in music and actually be somewhat happy doing it, be okay with not making money. I'm sorry. Like,
that's a huge point.
I think that people go into like careers or go into like, certain areas, especially as creatives, thinking that we're going to like make oogars of money and like do X, Y, and Z. And sometimes it doesn't happen. Like, that's not going to happen right away. Like, it's
Most
going to
times it
be
doesn't.
years of blood, sweat, and tears, literally. And like
Yes.
taking jobs you might not want to take or doing whatever just to make your dreams come true.
You haven't seen it yet because it hasn't gone up yet,
Mm-hmm.
but you will. Rory and I talked about day jobs,
Yeah.
and I was so happy that he made it a point to say that he made the jump to being a full-time musician, and he for a while was supporting himself as much as he could. The situation we're in right now changes the game completely.
It does.
But the idea that you don't dive into music or creativity in general, whether it's filmmaking or writing or poetry, or music, you don't do it because you want to make money. You do it because you love it.
It's a passion.
Right. And what's wonderful about that is by feeding your passion, it turns into a job, but it's not instantaneous. And I think so many people forget that creativity is a craft and it's not something you are born with. You can be born with a talent, but it needs to be harvested. It needs to be crafted. And so I'm so glad to hear you, not even as a performer, but someone else who is involved heavily in the industry, that even for you, it's something that requires so much of your own investment before you see the return.
And honestly, like, that's just the DIY scene in general. I can't tell you, how many people I know, like, work full-time jobs, like, I mean, normal 9 to 5 jobs,
Right.
and then come play a show at night or do weekend tours, or, the
Weekend
younger
warriors,
musicians
man.
I know, work in stores too, or like, do whatever, because we all know that this is our passion, and this is what we love to do. But you still have to, survive and take care of yourself too.
This is the goal, but we have to get there.
You have to get there. You have to get there.
So what made you sort of say, F this and make the jump? Because this is something you invest time in. How did you get there?
Quit my banking job. I literally could not do it anymore. And then I took a PR internship that summer. Obviously, writing was always there. I never I never forgot my writing roots.
Clearly not.
Clearly
Not to get
not.
ahead of
Yeah.
myself, but you do have a sort of
A music blog, music site. I take my own photos at shows, so it's me doing everything a little bit.
Right.
Except when I give the reins over to other artists in the scene, and then each month I'll have someone write a different op-ed. So Arthur from For Lack of a Term, who I also really love a lot.
Arthur's
That
great.
band is from Yonkers. Arthur wrote a really great op-ed about bands and rebranding. You did a really great op-ed on if rock is dying or not.
Thank you.
And that was a conversation we had from a video that we watched, or I made you watch. I was like, what's your take on this?
Oh yeah, that pretentious punk prick. Yeah. I forgot that's where that came from.
Well, I think I can see where he was coming from, but I didn't agree with his points.
Exactly.
I didn't agree with it. So I went, started working in retail, and then started going to more shows and meeting people and whatnot. And then kind of just started I guess rebuilding or building something new. And it's kind of how we got here today.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that, you had something in mind and you are doing what is necessary to make it happen for you. And I think that's the game. That's it.
Yeah. No, it is.
There has to be some sort of challenge that you face. And I don't mean oh crap, I've got to go to, my bank job in the morning, but more like what sort of challenge have you encountered, whether it's, business or, career or, in life, to get to where you are or to make this work?
I think figuring out the formula of getting more people to come to your shows has definitely been a big challenge for me. Just because New York is a really big scene, and it's awesome that we live in such a big scene where there's something literally for everyone. So if you're into your garage rock, we got you covered. If you want your more thrash punk, we have you covered. If you want just more general fast punk that says something, we got you covered. But, because there's always a show happening and there's multiple shows happening, different nights of the week, or there might be 5 shows happening on one night. It's always okay, are you going to come to my show? Are you going to go see this show? I do my best to never be mad at anyone. If you want to go see this other band play, guarantee you they're also really amazing and you should go support your scene. As long as you're going to see music, that's fantastic and that's great and that's what we want you to do.
I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second. Is it always going to see other shows, or is it maybe just staying home because I don't want to go out?
I mean, people have their reasons why they go to shows and people have their reasons why they don't go to shows. I'm not going to really judge you for it too much. As long as you're doing something productive and, keeping yourself safe and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, it's
you are such a trusting and sweet human. You know that? I'm such a cynical bastard because the artists have a hard time with that too. Like we try, like you'll meet someone at a show, like they came to see their buddy, they saw you play and they're talking to you afterwards, which is already awesome.
Yeah.
And then I'm so there and like you exchange socials, like you hit them up and then like the week of the show,
it's ghost. That happens a lot. But especially like around like certain holidays. So like Halloween.
A literal ghost town.
It's popping, but there's so many Halloween shows happening. Or even like the holidays, man. It's like,
oh, you can't book a show in December.
Oh no, you should do it. Like definitely do a Halloween show. But there's probably more times when you're competing with people because those are like bigger days.
You're piquing my interest because over the last 5 or 6 years, we're going to discount because I wasn't really doing much in this. But prior to that, like a show around Halloween, unless you can get a show at like Knitting Factory or Arlene's and it's a Halloween show on or like on the weekend of Halloween where people can come and you'd be in costume, make it a thing. That's the only reason you book a show around then. If it's around the holidays, I mean, 2 weeks before the new year and 2 weeks after the new year, you just don't book because people are out of town or they're not going to come to your show. And that was our mentality. Speaking to you now, I don't know that was appropriate. Like maybe we should have looked at it as just push harder. I'm not sure.
My holiday showcase is normally like the first week in December. Okay. So that first Saturday.
Gotcha.
Just because I know the later in December it gets, especially around like December 18th. I'll say between like early December. So like, let's say like December like 1st or 2nd to like the 18th.
Uh-huh.
Everyone's probably doing a show or whatnot. And then people start leaving the city if they're going home for the holidays. And then people are normally gone for like 2 weeks or a week or so, give or take.
And if your demographic is more college kids, like the 18th or so is when school's out for a month. So they're gone.
Out, everyone's gone. So yeah, it's definitely a tricky dance for sure. And even in the summer, it's like I would not book a showcase Memorial Day weekend. Like you couldn't pay me to do that.
Right.
And then July 4th, people are at barbecues or out of town. It's like
they don't care about your band. Obviously, you're a concert goer.
Yeah.
Would you consider yourself? And maybe it's an even flip, but would you say you go see more national acts, or do you favor the local shows because it's like your people?
Oh, I'm both because there's beauty in both.
What would you say was one of the better shows you've ever been to, local or national or international act? And the second part of that question is, did you have something to do with it?
I think one of my favorite shows I went to. So this lineup was Crowd the Airwaves because it was their EP release for their second EP. Samantha, who later became Nylosterous.
Okay.
Freya Wilcox and the Howl. And Pussy Wolf. And that was at Bowery Electric like 3 years ago. That was probably like one of my like favorite shows at Bowery Electric. And then I always love seeing Census Fail play. Buddy's antics, like his dance moves on stage are just fucking hilarious. And then I think another favorite show I saw was the first time I ever saw Fat Heaven play. So Fat Heaven's also a band that I'm a big fan of coming out of New York.
I've been doing this for many more years than I care to admit. And I have played with a bunch of bands who you look at and I'm just like, well, they have to be the next thing. They've got it all organized. Look at them. They lay out their gear. Their gear is immaculate. They clearly have some money backing them because it's incredible. They get up there. They put on a show. It's not my thing, but most of what's popular right now isn't my thing anyway.
Fair, yeah.
Holy crap, I can't believe I get to play a show with these guys. But it doesn't matter because 6 months later, no joke, I can't find this band anywhere.
They just disappeared?
They just disappear. Like, they have a huge following, or it seems like they have friends that show up to their show. They're the band who will then immediately leave afterwards and take their fans with them. But then 6 months later, they're gone. So maybe it is exactly what you're saying, where stick to your guns, be who you are,
right,
and just keep putting out, just be consistent.
Yeah, keep putting out good music, and the right fans I think will find their way to you. I don't want to sound like an after school punk special, but like,
I mean, I'm hoping that this is as much of me sneakily getting information from people to try and make myself better, but I'm putting it out there for other people to see also. So I'm hoping it comes across that way. The idea is that anyone who really wants to be part of this, whether it's the punk and metal scene or the singer-songwriter thing, or working in the industry itself and putting together showcases that people want to go to, I think understanding what you're up against is a big part of it.
It is, yeah. I am curious to see how, now, not just industries in general, but because we're in music, how we're kind of recover after this.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, I've been curious about this for the last month and a half because, let's be real. It's like you've had a lot of major, festivals canceled already.
But because of recent events,
yeah,
so much, not just in music, but in the world has changed. How has it affected you in the immediate?
For me, I was in the middle of actually planning 2 showcases, and now I have to kind of push everything back, rethink things. But then even after, when things go normal, or as normal as we can be in this
the new normal
post-pandemic world, it's like, okay, it's like, how are we all gonna, deal with packed rooms now? Or deal with crowded
now?
People that might be afraid to come into a room because they're immunocompromised. How are we going to deal with that now?
Thought that's crossed my mind is will people even gather in places like that anymore?
I don't think it's going to happen right away. The nerves of it, thinking about it right now, is just I don't even know how we're even going to do shows in the summer. Well, here's the thing. So a lot of these shows are stadium shows, right?
Right.
So if they're outdoor shows and it's hot, you might be okay.
Looking past the whole heat thing, just being outside, I think, will calm the nerves of people. Because you're outside, the wind will blow, you'll feel safer. Inside, where claustrophobia sets in, there's no escape. I think it's going to be a lot harder for people to get. I mean, I'm thinking not just in terms of concert going, but movie theaters
and
sports events. And then let's look at when the weather gets cold again, where there's no outside stuff. It's all going to be movie theaters and indoor concert venues and sporting arenas. I mean, without getting political, because I don't want to turn this into that. Just thinking more about the result and the effect it's going to have on people, both on your side of the music industry, my side of the industry, and then people that we know and love who are also, gig employees and creatives. Yeah. I've got filmmaker friends. I work in film when I'm not doing music. I've got, that side of my life has also been affected. So many people, I mean, just average people. I'm not even talking about creatives at this point. Just average people have been hit so hard.
Tell you, it's I have so many friends that actually had work when this started, steady, full-time 9-to-5 work.
Right.
And they've lost their jobs because their companies couldn't keep them on.
Well, exactly. I mean, everyone else is just catching up to us, but I mean, everyone has been affected. I had hoped, because I work in post-production, I'm not on movie sets. I don't do that. Everything has stopped. So it's alarming that even in that sort of a situation, everything's off the table for everyone. So I mean, this is a big deal. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting, but with the idea of keeping brighter days in mind, we all know that it's eventually going to get better. It's just, will it happen in the next 2 months or will it happen in the next 12 months?
Yeah.
No one knows. But what's your plan? How are you going to, and I'm assuming you want to remain involved in the industry because it's part of who you are.
Yes, I do. It's just going to take time to actually kind of like rethink things.
Yeah.
And I think what's been great about this whole thing has been seeing how other bands and how other people have really kind of taken this time to really put out some really amazing stuff. So many bands and bigger bands too have been trying to keep their crew employed through this whole thing. Because here's the thing, it's like if you're a full-time touring crew member, touring photographer, you don't have work for God knows how long. Because I mean, this is literally affecting everything globally.
Everything, yeah.
They have like a spring merch sale going on. Their crew in their store, they're like, all right, like you're each going to have like a different day or two. We're going to sanitize everything. And then, we're going to get this stuff shipped out. So we're keeping people employed.
That's
Taking
great.
Back Sunday, Adam has been dropping his own personal Venmo and his own personal PayPal. So, people can donate to try and keep their crew employed.
Uh-huh.
And then Thursday, they actually took like stock of some of their old merch or merch they've had from like their tour last year and whatnot, and actually turned it into masks for medical personnel and essential employees.
That's awesome.
And the masks have already sold out. So now they're on round 2. And they're being made in New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut, so they can kind of keep people employed.
That is beautiful. It's that thinking outside of the box that bands who have established themselves and people who have been able to establish themselves can kind of, I don't want to say give back because,
right.
I mean, if you think about what music is for people, it already is a way of giving to people. But
right.
That might sound really pretentious, but I mean, music kind of saved my life a few times. So, I
hear that a lot actually. And even our New York venues here, like Our Wicked Ladies doing something, the Broadway, they all have like, links and like,
that's great. I didn't know that.
GoFundMes and Venmos and like, they all have things going on so they can try and pay their employees while they're unemployed right now.
Yeah, that's great.
Amazing. Like, I wish everyone had that thinking.
Yeah, it's that sort of, faith in humanity kind of thing. It's nice to hear that. I mean, the situation, I usually worry a lot. Like I usually over worry a lot.
Same.
But in this sort of situation, because it's so obvious how hard it's hitting everyone.
Right.
This is the first time I think in a situation like this where I've just kind of sat back and said, all right, well, let's see what happens. Because I mean, no one is going to be able to do better in this than I am. And we're all in the same boat. Like we're literally all in this together.
It's kind of caused you almost to be calm in a way.
Right?
Like it's
how weird is that?
This weird, like calm, I guess the trauma response, but it's almost like caused you to kind of just accept it for what it is. And it's almost like this weird pseudo like stage of grief.
We're in the acceptance stage. We've passed the denial area already, I guess. But let me ask you. So, do you think you can find a way to make this work for you during this? I don't want to call it the time of uncertainty. If I read that in another email, oh my God.
Oh, I think for me, it's like, it's weird for me to like kind of have a routine and then not have one. That's kind of strange. It's like, oh, I'm not in store today because this is really weird. So it's like, okay, well, I'm going to pick up something that, do things that I've wanted to do. I just haven't had the time to. So here we go.
Now, have you tried to maintain a routine? Because
no,
I've tried to, honestly, because I'll go nuts routine, otherwise.
Honestly, for me personally, has been getting up and getting showered every day. And then whatever else I decide to fucking do after that, I'm fine with it. Yeah.
That's good enough. I'm feeling a tremendous amount of pressure personally to write music, and it's not coming.
Don't force it.
Well, exactly. The more I try, the more upset I get, and the more I'm like, I should be able to do this. And
you're forcing it too hard. Don't force it. Even if I just, turn on my Fender play and do a guitar lesson, that was something today.
Yes.
Fender knows, man.
I may have to look and see what kind of lessons they've got. I'm always looking to learn new techniques. I'm the
sure,
world's
like, you're
okayest
fine.
guitarist.
Like, you've been playing forever.
I've been playing for a long time, but you think I'd be better than I am. Just throwing that out there. I have to ask you this last question. I don't know if you can hear this. My dog is going crazy. I do want to ask, do you think you'll I don't want to say take advantage of the situation, because the situation does not need any advantage taken, but
No, it doesn't.
to help yourself through this ridiculousness, do you foresee maybe curating an online showcase or trying to spread the reach of scenes from the underground? Or do you maybe see this as a brainstorming so that the minute things can go back to quasi-normal, you've got shit to do?
So I've been thinking about it. I was like, well, maybe I should do like some quarantine chats or something with other people in the scene, because I have like, friends in college who like interview bigger bands too, and like have their radio, shows, or like, like other musicians that I would kind of want to chat with, and like that. I mean, that's something like that could be really fun. Or like,
you got to call it Scenes from Quarantine, though.
Scenes from Quarantine. Oh my God. When you go through a scary event or a trauma, and you kind of come through it somewhat unfazed, right?
Yeah.
At least me, I start thinking of like bigger dreams, that I'm like, you know what? Fuck it, let's go. Like, what do I have to lose? Or like, what's holding me back now?
You really put things in perspective. Like, you know what? Maybe I should pedal to the metal right now. I feel like we've been practicing for this our entire, adult lives. This whole idea of, oh, well, there's no work. All right, let's keep moving then. And everyone's like, oh my God, there's no work. You'll be fine.
You know what?
You'll be fine.
But it's funny though, because like the people I see complaining most about this wanting to be over aren't the creatives.
No.
It's the people that are still working from home that have that privilege too. And they're like, I want my life back. And I'm like, bitch, we all do. Like,
exactly. I think success after this point will be determined by your ability to adapt. All right. So I'm going to have to wrap this up. I'm just looking now. We've actually hit the 2-hour mark. But Krystal, thank you so much for doing this. This has been so much fun. Would you mind telling everyone where they can find more about you and Scenes from the Underground?
Yes. So I have 2 Instagrams. So my personal email, or personal Instagram, if you want to just send me a follow, it's Cammie, KAMMIE 1217. Or you can actually connect to Scenes from the Underground at Scenes from the Underground on Instagram.
So thank you again for doing this. Stay safe. Talk to you soon.
Bye.